Good morning, everybody.
Morning. Hi, everybody. I'm Cindy Norcott. I'm from ProTalent. Thank you for joining us. We're still getting a few more people joining us. This webinar has had a lot of positive response, so thank you for being part of this morning. It will only take an hour. So how it will work is the first 45 minutes, Colleen mainly will be speaking, and I'll be asking her a few questions. And then the last 45 minutes, last 15 minutes will be open to your questions. If you'd like and you prefer, you can put your questions in the chat in the beginning, and then we can chat, we can ask the questions to Colleen. Otherwise, you're welcome to unmute yourself in the last 15 minutes, and we can chat to you and find out your questions. So today, you know, I own a recruitment company, ProTalent. I meet people all the time. You're saying they're stressed, they're burnt out. I feel like that most of the time myself. And when Colleen and I chatted and said we'd like to do this webinar, we realized that it was meeting needs of quite a lot of people. So it's quite interesting to have you all here. But just to first introduce Colleen, she's an interesting individual. She describes herself as a human navigator, and who focuses on helping people to people better. And I think this is quite an interesting thing. So I think a lot of you are going to ask, how do our people better? So basically what she does, she uses, she does this by using coaching, consulting, facilitation, and speaking, and the Enneagram to generate well-being. So my first question to ask Colleen is, you know, there's this buzzword, everyone says I'm burnt out. And, you know, even if they're going through one small stressful patch, can you explain to me, what does burnout mean to you?
Okay, cool. Thank you so much, Cindy. Hi, everybody. It's always beautiful to be here in this space with Cindy and all of you. Yeah, burnout is a massive buzzword at the moment, and actually for good reason. Burnout is, the statistics around burnout are actually mind-blowing. Some of the statistics reading as many as 77 people currently in the workspace are experiencing burnout. So what is it? It's known to be chronic, which is long-term relentless. So chronic physical, mental, or emotional stress. And if we look at the World Health Organization definition, they talk about it as syndrome resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed.
Fantastic. Thanks, Colleen. I think it's nice to just get that definition out the way. I wanted to start off just maybe sharing a more personal story of my own. I don't know about anybody else, but I battle to manage my energy. I start every year with a sprint. January comes and I am sprinting out the gates. I've got my goals, I've got my action plans, and I want to achieve the whole year's worth of achievements in the first 3 months. But that leads me to like October, November, where I start limping to the end. So I move from a sprint to a limp. This year I decided, you know what, I'm going to see a health practitioner because I'm always feeling tired and stressed, and like I feel like I'm operating on the edge of my nerves. And when I went to my health practitioner, she actually said to me, it looks like you're skirting burnout. She said your vagal nerve is crazy, your cortisol is high, your immune system, you've got no vitamin D. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, how do I fix this? Anyway, not to try and fix it, but one of my goals this year was to go and do the Camino. And I walked 18 days. I was away for 18 days. I walked 311 kilometers in 12 days with my daughter and a friend and her daughter. And it was so interesting. No emails, no phones, no responsibilities, no to-do lists. It was unbelievable. And I came back and I saw her the next day, which was quite coincidental. She put me onto all her assessment machines, and she said, unbelievable, 50% improvement in vagal nerve, 60% in cortisol improvement, 35% in immune system. And she was like, this is amazing. And she was saying it's because you walked, you were in nature, you rested, you played. And I thought, wow, I wish I could be like this in everyday life. However, Within a week, I was taking rescue tablets because I came back to over 1,000 emails, a booked up diary, and I actually felt like my cortisol had come down, but now I wasn't coping with the stress. So I don't know about you, but Colleen, that's kind of my experience. So I suppose the question is, where do we start? We're hovering in a world of stress, perhaps near burnout, as I've been told, or as many people have been told. Um, where do we start?
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. This is a huge passion area of mine because I just feel like it's not feasible for us to go and walk the Camino or go to a retreat center or even smaller things like massages and lavender baths, as wonderful as they are in terms of helping us. What we need to do is we need to get better at stress on the daily. We need to get better at managing stress as an integrated strategy into our lives. So I come from a background in strategy. So no matter what work I'm doing, whether it's grief processing or whatever, I always look at it with a strategic eye. And the strategic eye on managing burnout is that we integrate the mitigating processes. So how we can kind of balance it out and find balance, we weave it into the daily. And so step number one in that is developing something that I've termed nervous system literacy. So we are largely illiterate when it comes to our nervous systems. It's not something we were trained in or schooled in. It's not something that we understand particularly well. But if you look at literacy, literacy is around communication. And communication is both talking and it's listening. So we need to learn to dialogue with our nervous system. And this is absolutely key. So our nervous system is sending us messages. It is communicating with us all the time. We are not necessarily listening, or we are hearing, but we're not translating that into a language that we understand. So by becoming nervous system literate, we literally start to successfully, constructively communicate with our nervous system. So, I mean, I'll just give you two quick examples of that. I've had burnout twice in my life. And the one was when I was a young mother. I started a BE verification agency when my daughter was 3 months old. This is 21 years ago. Not intelligent, okay, but there it is. That's what I did. And by the time it was her first birthday, I was in hospital with pneumonia. Underneath the pneumonia, I had TB. When I recovered from the TB, I had about a 15-year battle with chronic fatigue. And if I look back from that, all the signs were there, but I just was not paying attention. I wasn't nervous system literate at all. And then the more recent example is once I had already started doing this work, and we had a very, very stressful 2021, I think us and the rest of the globe. But I had other things going on beyond COVID lockdown and saving businesses. I had a chronically sick child, I had a chronically depressed child. It was a lot. And I thought I was looking after myself well, but I still ended up with shingles, which is a direct communication from the nervous system saying, we're not coping anymore. We are frazzled beyond belief. And so that made me drop even more deeply in this work because I thought I was looking after myself well in 2021. I was already in this working space. And so it took my work to a whole new level of understanding how we need to really take care of ourselves. So that's it, really. It's listening to the signs, listening to the messages that are coming through our body, they're coming through our emotional domain, and they're coming through our mental space, and being able to tap into them and really pay attention. So I also just wanted to pop in some statistics, if I may, Cindy, because it's always just interesting
Please.
to
Yeah.
like make it real. And so the American Psychological Association says 77% of all employees are experiencing current burnout. 1 in 3 South Africans report feeling emotionally drained from their job. Burnout increases the risk of clinical depression by over 200%. So quite often depression and burnout are misdiagnosed because they happen together so often. And then burnout also triples the risk of workplace mistakes. And in the United States, and this is a staggering amount, presenteeism and absenteeism cost the United States $190 billion annually. So we're not talking about a small issue here at all, which we know, Cindy, because we know this webinar was pretty much oversubscribed almost immediately. So clearly all of you are relating to the severity and the reality of this.
Absolutely. And Colleen, it's so interesting because you mentioned about that awareness, and I think I'd love to maybe ask people to put in the chat just, how they're feeling at the moment. When I do motivational talks, I often try and just connect with the audience and say, how are you feeling? I mean, just before, as Colleen and I were setting up for the webinar, we were talking about the stressful things that we've only experienced just this very morning. And it's amazing what we're going through. And I think for many years, I definitely think I've been nervous system illiterate. You kind of just keep going, you keep pushing through no matter what. But Colleen, once we acknowledge that we are on the road to burnout, let's just say we go, okay, I think I might be on this road. I've been working like crazy. I've been juggling multiple demands all the time. If we can't change the circumstances that are stressful, what can we do? Because yes, some of us might say my boss is horrible, or my job is so demanding, or my family are just not in a good space. But we can't run away. What are your suggestions there?
Yeah, no, we can't run, we can't do the Camino every other week.
I've
So
tried.
yeah, sadly. So okay. Awareness, like the base of my work starts with awareness. It doesn't matter what I'm consulting or facilitating or coaching on. Awareness is step number one. So understanding that there's something going on and that we need to course correct. So if we dive a little bit deeper into that, I talk about when I'm working with clients about developing a very personalized stress map. So, like, what are the GPS coordinates so that we don't go down the road of burnout? We rather course correct and we go down the road of balance. And our individual stress map is the way to do that. So, that means understanding ourselves better. I'm just going to share screen with you for a moment, if I may, and please tell me if this has worked. Can you see
It's
my...
working, yes.
So the very first step, and if anybody wants this afterwards, please just shout. I will send it to you in a PDF. It's quite a powerful little model. So the first thing in developing our stress map is if we need to know where we want to go, we need to know where we are, first of all. So in any directions in life, we've got to understand that. So to be able to put a stake in the ground and say, where am I right now? So if you look at this diagram, in the middle it says the window of tolerance. So this is our sweet spot. This is balance. This is nervous system regulation. In this window of tolerance, we are flexible, adaptable, coherent, clear, stable, energetic, empathetic, compassionate, clear, stable, all of that. It's all of that good stuff. It's like when I like say to my clients, when life is a-okay, when we're a-okay, this is that time. So we can't live in our window of tolerance always, but understanding when we are in it and really understanding what is our heart feeling like, what is our mind feeling like, what is our body feeling like, then we start to understand what it looks like when we are going out of our window of tolerance. So that is step number one, the sweet spot.
Okay, that sounds great. But I mean, I know that I know that feeling when everything is a-okay. I always think I should take a photo. On this very moment, on this day, I felt calm and peaceful and joyful, and all things were great. But we can't stay there forever. So what do we do?
Okay, perfect. So this is where we build that stress map. Okay, so we understand the window of tolerance is the ideal. We want to stay there as long as possible. When we're out of it, we want to get back to it as quickly as possible. So we increase our frequency and our duration in our life in our window of tolerance. But when we start venturing out of it, okay, the critical step here is to identify what the triggers are. So what is taking us out of our window of tolerance into hyperarousal or hyperarousal, which I will explain to you in a moment. So what do those triggers look like? Now, if we think about the workplace, we've got people, process, and place. And one or more of those elements are going to be triggering us. So if it's people, it could be a really unpleasant customer. It could be a boss that's micromanaging us or very dictatorial or very absent. It could be a co-worker that's trying to edge in on our job or talk about us behind our back, or there's just other relationship dynamics. So it could be people triggers. Process triggers, it might just be something that's, I mean, there's so many processes that stress us out, but it might be leading to not meeting a deadline or not meeting quality issues. Or it might be an administrative, a logistical process, something in the way the business is running and the way we are having to do our jobs is stressing us out. And then place is literally the environment. Now, this talks into culture. And it talks into the physical environment of place. I facilitated a workshop recently where one of the ladies was a new employee, and she was so excited to be in a workplace, having a desk near a window. Like she kept on staring out the window and smiling, and her new colleagues were saying, what's going on? She's like, there's natural light. I can't believe
Wow.
I'm working. It's natural light. And so, this is place, people, place, and process. So looking at those triggers, and some of those triggers are very obvious. Deadlines, cash flow crunches, relationship team dynamics, we know that. But a lot of the triggers that we experience and that are leading to burnout because they're chronic and they're also quite invisible are the ones that are unsighted. They're less obvious. They're more nuanced. And so a lot of my work now I'm finding is teaching what's termed what I call trauma-informed leadership. Trauma-informed leadership, where leadership gets to understand that there is a composite of trauma within the workplace, okay, stress and trauma within the workplace, even if they don't understand it, even if they can't see it all, it is there. And I wanted to just give you an example of that. So and we don't expect leaders to be psychologists, and we don't expect workplaces to become environments, counseling environments, but it's about just having the lens to be able to see, because if you heard the statistics before, you know that burnout is worth managing for the individual and the collective gain. So one of those very nuanced forms of chronic trauma and stress in the workplace can come out of ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences. So this is where people growing up have experienced some form of abuse or neglect or substance abuse in the home, or divorce, or a parent who's mentally unstable, or just some level of dysfunction at home. Okay, so the statistics on ACEs is incredible. Up to, and I think this is a conservative statistic actually, but 85% of South Africans have experienced at least one adverse childhood experience. That's a huge statistic, okay, because ACEs are known to create a compounded stress in the nervous system. So 2 out of every 3 people have experienced at least one ACE globally, 85% or more in South Africa. The risk with ACEs, when you've experienced even just one, is that there's an exponential more increased risk of burnout, anxiety, depression, substance abuse, chronic illness, etc. So even if leaders are not tapping into the ACEs in their workplace because it's not necessarily appropriate, the understanding that they are there, that there is trauma and stress beyond the obvious in the workplace, is absolutely critical to be able to understand that there's things triggering you, each of you sitting here today, and triggering your people that might be silent, invisible, or nuanced.
Colleen, that's actually frightening. If you think, if we have a workforce with 85, I would say 100 people, that 85 of us statistically have had some early childhood trauma that is actually having some impact on our lives, which is just quite frightening. One of the things I just wanted to ask you, I mean, we do know what stresses us, but how do we get back into this window?
Okay. So if we just talk about these triggers again, and I want to just backpedal because I forgot to say something, is that when we are out of our window of tolerance for whatever reason, chronic stress, acute stress, nuanced stress, obvious stress, episodic stress, whatever it is, we are outside of this window of tolerance over here, this sweet spot. Part of our stress map is to understand what it looks like when we're out. So we know what it looks like when we're in, point 1 on the map. We know what takes us out, what are our triggers, point 2 on our individual stress map. Point 3 on our individual stress map is understanding what does it look like when we are out of it. Okay, so before we try and discuss getting back into our window of tolerance, starting to recognize the signs when we are in hyper or hyperarousal. So the way I simplistically like to explain this is hyperarousal is a nervous system state that is quite excitable. So it's more the red stuff. We're angry, we're excitable, we're agitated, we might have racing thoughts, we might be sweaty, our heart might be beating fast, we just might be moving fast on that hamster wheel. There's restlessness here, it's just a little bit chaotic. It's busy, that sort of loud stress. And then we've got hyperarousal, and we can often move between the two, even on the daily. And hyperarousal is more that quieter stress. It's more withdrawn, like just that fawn response, the freeze response. We might be passive, we might be less responsive, less verbal, more rigid, more lethargic. So these are signs for us to understand and looking at ourselves and understanding what's happening for us. Remember, mind, body, heart. There are symptoms related to stress that we may not put as stress related at all. For example, skin rashes or frozen shoulder or gastric issues, very, very, very common because of the gut-brain axis. So often if there's gut issues, there's issues in our mental domain, and if there's issues in our mental domain, there's gut issues. So that's the kind of physical thing in the mental space, intrusive thinking, or a lack of clarity of thought, a lack of coherent speaking, a lack of ability to be strategic, to be creative, to be innovative, all of these things that we want out of our people. And then in the heart space, it could just be a sense of loneliness, overwhelm, just all of that kind of emotional domain. So recognizing how we are, what's triggering us out of our stress state. When we are in our stress state, what does it look like? And then the next part of that personal GPS map, because this is different for every one of us, is to get back to your question, Cindy, because I did a big detour there, is how do we get back into our window of tolerance? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So if we draw parallels to years gone by, and you actually cited a lot of this on your walk in the Camino. So you all would have heard that, people saying in talks that you go to on stress, oh, back in the old days, we used to fight the saber-toothed tiger, and, we had this burst of stress, and then the saber-toothed tiger was, taken care of, and the stress subsided. And nowadays, we don't just have one saber-toothed tiger, we have saber-toothed tigers all through the day. That's the chronic nature of stress. So that's a common analogy that's drawn from hunter-gatherer time to now. But the less common analogy that's drawn is that in the hunter-gatherer time, we were living how? We were living exactly how the likes of Dr. Huberman from Stanford University is making gazillions of dollars on podcasts telling us we're supposed to live more like hunter-gatherers. In other words, more movement, natural movement, more time in the sunshine, outdoors, fresh air in nature, more eating seasonally, eating less toxic food and eating seasonally and eating fresh, more living in community, more sleeping in the natural rhythms. In days gone by, the sun would have set, the fire would have burnt down, and they would have gone to sleep. And then as the sun rose, they would have woken up, and without fighting blue light and all sorts of artificial things. So how do we get back in our window of tolerance? We first of all deal with the fundamentals. We absolutely deal with the fundamentals of well-being. What I've just said: movement, sunlight, nutrition, hydration, community, sleep. Those are the basic pillars of well-being, and this is what feeds our nervous system. So at a very basic level, if those things are compromised, then we're already going to be in a state of nervous system dysregulation. So that's the one thing in terms of getting us back in, and working out our mechanism. For me, it's between clients, between meetings, I go outside, I put my feet on the grass, and I put my face in the sun for 2 or 3 minutes, and I just breathe, just quietly, no phone, no distraction. And so you find the thing that regulates you. It might be a walking desk, or have an app on your phone that says move every 40 minutes or 25 minutes, or drinking more water during the day, or whatever it is. We find our things, breath work obviously being a very, very common and very popular one. And then a lot of the physical things, there's things that we can do that feed our nervous system as well. Like I've got a stress, one of those resistance bands. I've got it tied between the two front legs of my chair, and I'll play with it throughout meetings. I'll stretch and push, and that's proprioceptive input. It's very, very powerful movement. So, and there's things that we can do in meetings, even just pushing our hands together, pulling our hand. You can do it under the desk. You can do this under the desk where nobody's even seeing, but you're just getting proprioceptive input into your nervous system. So these are micro moments of movement. And then other sensory inputs are, I've got a diffuser here that's never not on at my desk. Just looking at beautiful things, just catching the clouds passing by the sky. What can I see that's beautiful? What can I hear that's beautiful? What can I taste that tastes good? What can I smell that tastes good and that smells good? And what can I touch? So again, just a beautiful scarf or something. So putting that sensory input into your nervous system. So these are the kind of mechanisms that we need to look across our sensory system and then also across the domain. So what is an emotional input that's positive? What is a mental input that's positive? What is a physical input that's positive? And when we get our little recipe, or what we carve into our individual GPS nervous system map, we get to then create a recipe that's very unique to us, that just works for us. And it doesn't cost any extra money, and it doesn't take much extra time. Much of what I teach, we actually integrate into our daily practice. It's just about how we do that. It's about the awareness of not just having a cup of coffee. It's actually smelling the cup of coffee, feeling the heat in your hands. It's the same thing that you're doing, but you're pulling it into your nervous system in a way that the nervous system is building credit from these favorable sensory inputs that don't take any extra time. They only take the awareness.
Thanks, Colleen. I love that. It made me think last week, I had a day where I had a lot of pressure. The to-do list was too long. I had to do a lot of work that I don't like doing. I was asking people for prizes for my charity. I had to do stuff with my taxes, finances. And there's a saying that if you spend more than 25% of your day doing work that you hate, it's almost impossible to have job satisfaction. So on this particular day, I think it was Thursday, I was working from home. I actually was sitting at my desk going, I don't feel okay. I feel stressed. I feel miserable, and why am I feeling like this? And I took myself outside and I gave myself a half an hour break. I lay in the sun. I was working from home, on the grass. My dogs were around me. They thought this was Christmas. And I just lay there and I practiced my breathing. And I tell you, coming back to the desk, I just felt like a different person. I could tell that cortisol had gone right down. So yeah, it really, really definitely helped me as well. But things that I just wanted to share a few things that I'm trying to do on a daily basis. Believe me, I'm no expert. I'm a beginner. But every morning I start with hot lemon water, and I take homeopathic drops, olive leaf and maple balm. Is it olive? Yeah, I take those two with water. I have a scented candle next to my desk. Apparently, they're quite toxic, but it does smell nice. When I'm in the car, I practice laughter therapy. I sometimes just try and laugh for a minute. And it's amazing. We don't laugh because we're happy. We're happy because we laugh. We're happy because we smile. There's even a thing called the Duchenne smile. You put a pencil or pen in your mouth for a minute and you smile and you feel better afterwards. So these are all like mind tricks, And I also do a lot of prayer and gratitude when I'm driving. Like I will think of all the things that I'm grateful for. And it's amazing how it lifts your mood as well. Most of the time we sit and we think we're hungry, but we're actually thirsty. So just drinking more water, it's definitely helped me as well. And I think the best thing is, that saying we are chained to our desks. How often do we sit there and 3 hours have gone by? We weren't made for that. So I think taking a break on the hour, or at least on the hour. A lot of us are doing this tapping of the vagal nerve. I don't know if you've got any insights to that. Trying to do humming. Apparently it really calms down your singing or humming. I don't sing very well, so I hum. and apparently that's really, really good for us as well. And just trying to stretch every now and then. Colleen, you mentioned having a sore neck and shoulders. I don't know anyone on this call who would say I don't ever have a sore neck or shoulders. And then for me, daily connecting with a friend or a loved one, just that intentional phone call, the sharing of voice notes and reaching out. I think that works really, really well for me. But Colleen, I wanted to ask you, we know what stresses us out. I think we all do. We have that self-awareness. We maybe don't always know how it shows up in our body. But, how do we get back into that window of tolerance now? So like I'm stressed, I'm doing work I don't like, my boss has just shouted at me, I've got difficult clients, I've got deadlines. Do you have any more tricks on how we can get back in there? Or how we can expand it? I mean, I suppose as we've spoken about get back in there, but it's more like can we make this bigger so that the dysregulation from the hyper arousal is less and the hypo arousal is less? So we because I mean, one of the things that you said is feigned death. What is that? That sounds horrific. Please explain that, because I don't know if anyone else has asked that. Thanks.
Yeah, feigned death is a very extreme form of hyperarousal, but it's literally a shutdown. So
sorry, Colleen, can you take away the screen share? So because somebody's asked if they can see faces. Thank you. That's great. Thanks.
Yeah, so that feigned death is literally the extreme of a depressive shutdown state, where you just absolutely disengaged with life completely. Yeah, and remember, all of these responses are on a spectrum. So you might think, oh, I'm very much at the shallow end, but we need to just have the awareness of what it looks like to be in hypo or hyper arousal, because that is our road sign. So, if you just look at it and go with an analogy for a second, it's much easier to course correct. So if we're going down a road towards burnout and there's a fire pit at the end, and there's all sorts of signs. There's signs saying put on your emergency gear, build the risk factors, know that, turn around. And there's people saying, don't go this way. And we just carry on because our head's down and we're just going at full pace. And we end up in the fire pit. It's much harder to get out the fire pit unscathed than it is to course correct. And so your question on how do we expand the window of tolerance is such an important one, because the window of tolerance is not fixed. That sweet spot for some people with very sensitive nervous systems and with high levels of overwhelm and that are close to burnout will have a window of tolerance that's very fine. Okay, it's very narrow. And what we want to do is we want to try and expand their window of tolerance so that we can bounce around to the edges of hypo and hyper arousal without toppling into them. So this is our goal, and this is what we call nervous system resilience. We build capacity in the nervous system, and there's heaps of ways that we can do this. But I like to talk about, again, like with that strategic eye, is that we adopt proactive strategies. Let's not crisis manage burnout, because burnout is crisis already. And now we're crisis managing a crisis. And it's just, so let's rather get proactive. We understand that not all stress is resolvable. Not all stresses we can overcome. So we're facing realities that are stressful and that are making demands on us. So where we can get strategic and proactive on it is that we build reserves into our nervous system. So if we see this as a model of input and output of spend, we want to deposit. We always want to deposit more money in our bank account than we want to draw, right? We don't want to be overdrawn. We don't want to be in debt. Doesn't feel good. It's the same thing with our nervous system. We want to be putting more favorable inputs, and so that they exceed the drain on our nervous system. And this is really the proactive strategy. So we've spoken about the reactive strategy, which is like, oh my word, I'm in hyperarousal because I can hear my voice is going up and I'm very reactive and I'm very like flushed in my cheeks. So I need to get back in. The proactive strategy is about how do I stay in it longer. And those deposits are very similar to the reactive strategy, except we don't wait until we're stressed to do them. We do them anyway. So we build the sensory inputs into our nervous system. So I really, it's so simple that I think it is underappreciated in terms of its impact. For us to look at the sensory system, so our senses are our communication mechanism between the outside world and our nervous system. It is our nervous system that's reading our sensory input. So when we're giving our nervous system email after email after email after ringing phone after pinging phone after what, traffic jam, and we've got all of that data that's coming in, we want to balance it out with the favorable data. And this is where I say it's so simple, people often don't do it. It's to take the time to look at something beautiful, smell something beautiful, taste something beautiful, listen and see something beautiful, and touch something beautiful. So whatever that may be, is to have I have a sensory friendly work environment. Every single one of those senses is taken care of on the daily. And the same thing with you with the hot water in the morning. I put lemon in it, I put mint in it. It looks beautiful, it tastes beautiful, feels warm in my hands. And it's not just these things that you do, and this is critical, it's the awareness that they're good for us that helps build more impact in our nervous system. So we're doing a lot of this stuff anyway. We're having, the coffee or the matcha or whatever anyway. But when we have it with the meaning, like, oh, this is good for my nervous system, our brains are meaning-making machines. So when we understand that this is what it's doing, then our nervous system reads it more powerfully. So suddenly these very simple things like experiencing a beautiful clouds drifting across a blue sky, but knowing that I'm looking at that and it's good for my nervous system, amplifies the experience of the beautiful thing that I'm looking at. So this is all verified scientifically, where people are put into, scanning machines, and they are given things to look at, and then they're given the meaning, like, this is good for you to look at this and to listen to this music, and how it lights up the brain in different ways. So, we can win the lotto in our nervous system and go in the Camino as an equivalent to winning the lotto. And then we come back and we spend it all in 2 weeks because we've come back to an absolute chaotic, pressured environment. So none of us want to be lotto winners and blow our lotto. We want to rather make stable, consistent deposits into our nervous system, and also, as far as possible, manage the output. And this is how we start to expand our window of tolerance, because we're investing in ourselves. And another way that we can invest in ourselves is how we frame things. So perspective is reality, perception is reality. So what are we perceiving? So for example, if we are perceiving that we are under threat by a work colleague, that experience of threat will be read by our nervous system as danger and will immediately put us into a chronic stress state. So being able to manage those kind of dynamics, have the conversations that you need to have, quell the perception, reframe the experience. When I had a client last week, she's an architect, and she feels like she's been overlooked for promotion, and it's really, really stressing her out, and it actually slid her into a depression. And part of that was because she was perceiving the lack of promotion as a statement on her. I'm not good enough. I haven't been promoted. I'm not good enough. That was the story in her head. That was the narrative that was running. And it wasn't the promotion that was causing her to feel stressed. It was the story that she had woven around it. So when we did the work on it, and we worked out that actually she works internationally. She's in an all-male dominated workplace, and the men were getting, promoted around her. And actually, it wasn't a statement on her. It was a statement on the organization and their archaic patriarchal system. So not that it changed her situation, but it changed her relationship to her situation, because she wasn't taking it as a personal indictment on her. So that reframe completely shifted how she was dealing with that experience. So working therapeutically, working with a coach, working with a mentor, communicating with your leaders, all of these things help you to be able to bring a different frame of reference to your reality. And when we understand things differently, we also expand our window of tolerance. And then lastly, in terms of expansion of window of tolerance, when we as leaders understand that our staff and our people and ourselves are all stressed, I teach what I call the 5S model in the workplaces. And essentially it's around, which I'm sure all of you know about, building psychologically safe workplaces. Because a lack of psychological safety means that the nervous system is on high alert all the time. Now we're back into chronic stress, which, remember, is ongoing and unrelenting. because the environment is not psychologically safe. So our nervous system is designed to keep us safe. So if we're in an environment that's not safe, it's a contradiction to us trying to find well-being. So the 5S model is around truly seeing our employees, creating safety, soothing stress, making sure that people feel secure in their jobs, and offering support where needed. And again, in workplaces, we build a whole strategy around this 5S model. But when people feel like they work in a 5S model, this automatically expands their window of tolerance so that they can cope with more. And it gives a sense of agency. When we have agency, we don't feel victim to our circumstances. And when we don't feel victim, we don't carry victim stress with us all the time. So I'm trying to land a whole lot of concepts in a short space of time, but just to say, we can absolutely build our nervous system resilience with a mindful, intentional, strategic approach.
Thanks, Colleen. I love those 5S's. And I'm sure most of us, if we look at our own workplaces, know that we don't actually have them in place in the workplace. So I think that's quite and maybe a nice thing to consider. And how do we make our workplaces focused on those 5S's to make them more safe and let people feel seen? One of the things you mentioned was reframing. And I read somewhere that people who perceive stress as negative will feel far more negative symptoms than those who see stress as a positive thing. So maybe it's just a personal check-in with ourselves is, if I go, I've got a busy day, I get quite excited by a busy day personally, whereas I know a lot of people who go, it's too much, and then they'll tell you all the negatives of the busy day. So I think that's an important thing as well. But, it just reminds me, what you're saying is that we need to make these deposits in the day, not only when we are at breaking point. So it reminds me of that story where the man is chopping the tree in the forest. Somebody comes up to him and says, "Why don't you take a break? Your axe is so blunt." And the person says, "I'm too busy chopping." And I think for many of us, maybe for many years, we've been thriving on neglect. But now we're not thriving anymore, and we're still neglecting ourselves. We're treating ourselves like a machine. I often think, gosh, I would never expect a friend to do what I do. I would tell them to slow down, calm down, look after themselves. I don't know if any of you have done this, but you go to work with no food. But yet you planned your whole work to a T, but you didn't plan anything for yourself. I was reading something by one of the top authors where he said he realized he was time poor because he needed to go to the doctor urgently, but couldn't go that week. And I think so many of us are putting ourselves under a lot of pressure, or we are just enduring a lot of pressure. So I love what you said is know the signs along the way. And I think the only way we're going to do that is to stop the work, move away from the emails, move away from the workplace, take a break, take time every day to reflect, even if it's in the car. Don't turn on the radio, don't have anything on, and ask yourself those questions. How do I feel? What is my body saying to me right now? Because I think many of us are ahead on a neck, and we don't feel below the neck, and I think that's a scary thing. I also think for some of us, it's a practical thing as well. Never mind soothing yourself, but before we even get into that space of asking, is my workload too much? Do I need to start saying some very hard no's? Am I completely burnt out because of all these responsibilities? Do I need a family meeting to say to my children and spouse, I need help. This is untenable. Reaching out to someone to say I'm not okay. I think that's a really, really good starting point as well. Removing responsibilities that no longer serve us. I think, I don't know, some of you might know, I head up the Robin Hood Foundation. And, this year I started, it was our 20th year. And I looked at it and I thought, it's been 20 amazing years. I've loved it. But this burden, this daily responsibility, I'm going to hand over to somebody next year. So I'm doing that. And it's been a huge thing for me, something I thought I could never do. But I can't tell you that feeling of freedom, knowing that from next year I can just be a volunteer and not have to carry this big burden. And I suppose a question to ask you is there a burden you need to put down? Is there somebody you need to say, not even a no, a hell no to? Sometimes there is that. Knowing when to stop work. Some of us just don't know when to stop. We work all the time. And I think one of the things that I did in COVID was honor the Sabbath. So taking a Saturday or a Sunday where I don't work. I don't go into my computer. I don't do any work. And they reckon if you don't take a Sabbath, you will need a sabbatical. And I think Colleen's testament to that as well. And I also I heard something the other day I wanted to share. You know, breathing. You think we've been doing it since we were born, but most of us are terrible at it. So I do the box breathing in the car, and I try and make time every day to do breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. And I try and do that several times a day just to kind of get some deep breathing going. But I heard that apparently they've done research, and when we answer an email, we get email apnea. Who would have thought? So we've got this email, and you stop breathing for a while. Now imagine you're getting 150 emails a day. You're not doing your nervous system any good. So I think those are just things that I wanted to share. And I've also been told, and I'm not, please don't use this as medical advice, that most of us are deprived of magnesium. Most of us are deprived of vitamin D. So anyway, Colleen, last thoughts, anything you'd like to share before we hand over to the guests?
Yes, I think just on a closing note, and very much on the back of what you've just said, all of which I love, is there is always scope to simplify our lives. Always. And when we look hard enough and we feel enough desire to do so, there is. We think that there isn't, but there is. And it's so important because, so first of all, simplify where you can. And when you create a space in your life, most of us then just fill it with something else. But actually just sit in the space for a moment and just be like, we are human beings. We are not human doings. And yet we have lost that beingness. And it's within the human beingness, that Sabbath that you spoke about, is that we find more aliveness. And when we find more aliveness, then we've got more capacity to do the things that we want to do, which links very closely to my second closing point, which is what I call the paradox of time. And sometimes, like that guy said, he's time poor. Sometimes we've got to, look, he was obviously already over the line in crisis mode, but sometimes we've got to make the time in order to get the time. So we've got make the time to see the friend, make the time to do the exercise, make the time to meditate, to pray, to journal, to step outside for a moment, to do some movement. Because when we give ourselves that time and we invest in ourselves, that thing we think we don't have time for, it expands the rest of our time because we have more capacity. So that is the paradox of time. So when you hear yourself saying, I don't have any time, please be your own best debater and say, really, truly, I don't have time for the good stuff, because the good stuff can only help us in the workspace. And then lastly, around this, what we're talking about is actually looking after ourselves. And it comes down to this. We need to value ourselves enough to want to look after ourselves. We need to value our people enough to want to look after them as well. So it really is a shift in thinking from this is not a luxury, this is an essential, and I and my people are deeply, deeply deserving and worthy of well-being. And what do we need to do in order to harness that well-being? So just please don't let burnout be a crisis that you have to manage. Rather, let it be a preemptive, proactive strategy that fundamentally shifts the landscape of your life and the people that you work with.
Well, thank you so much, Colleen. You know, it's funny, at the beginning of this year, at one of our first staff meetings, I said, we're going to ban a word in our company that we're never allowed to say anymore. So when I walk in, I go, how's everyone? How are you? And everyone goes, I'm busy. And I said, you know, we've got to stop that language. We've got to stop glorifying busy. How many of us do that? I mean, if you say, a friend asks you, how's work? How are you doing? We very seldom would acknowledge that we're not busy. But to be honest, I don't think many of us are not busy. And, you know, if that's your constant dialogue, you know, how can we reframe that to being I'm productive or I'm calm, I'm focused? So we've been trying to do that. And then on the note about meditation, you know, about taking time out, I remember reading a quote and it says, you know, you should meditate for 30 minutes a day unless you're really, really busy and stressed. Then you should meditate for an hour. And I think that's alluding to the self-care that you're talking about. But I recently went for a treatment, and the health practitioner said, you know what your body is screaming for? I've got this one word. And I said, I have no idea what it wants. And she said, stillness. How many of us have time to be still and really to just process and reflect? And I thought that was quite an interesting thing. And I love what you said, Colleen, sit in the space. So, and to be comfortable with that space, to say, well, I've got that hour today, I've got 2 half-an-hour slots tomorrow, which are for me, and not fall into the temptation of filling them up. If anyone wants to unmute, you are welcome. If you have any questions or comments, we would happily have you ask a question. And then I see Rushka has said, stop watching so much TV streaming. Time opens up. You're absolutely right. Many of us are spending so much time in the digital space. Colleen, do you want to just share anything on that? Any thoughts on how it's negatively impacting our stress?
Yeah, look, I think it's nothing that we don't know. It's a combination of blue light and the doom scrolling and looking at everybody else's perfect life or looking at their horrendous what's happening on the news. But most of all, exactly what Rushka says. And I've just facilitated actually a workshop on the artist's way, which I facilitate once a year because I love it so much. And we do a digital detox on the Artist's Way. We do a week-long digital detox, and it is so amazing. Exactly what Rushka says. Time opens up. Suddenly you're fiddling around in old cupboards, or you're looking at old photographs, or you're playing a board game with your family, I mean, it's just incredible. I don't know if any of you have got on your phones where it says what your screen time usage is every week. Mine pops up every week. It's your average screen time was 6 hours a day or whatever. And we are consumed by our digital. So even just little things like turning off our notifications. So not every email and every, message has to ping on our phone, but we go there when we're ready to go there. It's very valuable. Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yes,
Sure.
Rushka, go ahead.
Hi there. How's Nicole? How are you?
Good welcome.
Good. Lovely listening to you. Thank you for taking the time to meet with all of us. So I went to a Jewish day school, and I must say that one of the benefits of learning about a Shabbat is when digital diet happens within a Orthodox family on a Friday night till a Saturday night, where the family walk to the synagogue, they spend time, there's no digital space in there. And I always take my hat off to that culture that they make time for family. And as you said, makes up so much time. And I think it grounds you for the whole week. So if I might just share some personal experience for myself, and I think Colleen and I have been chatting offline, that I'm a survivor of a 130-day coma. And I was written off medically as that I wouldn't survive, and yet I did. And when I came out of the coma, I couldn't walk, I couldn't talk, I couldn't write, and I couldn't eat. And then I had to go to rehabilitation to learn how to walk again. And from being a corporate flyer and working for all the banks and consulting and fancy cars and traveling and big socialite, all of a sudden now I'm walking with humility. And it's difficult because I was just appointed on a board for Digital Stockfell platform, which is a really high-tech kind of company right now and everyone's sought after. And yet I've been appointed as a director. And my diary is busy. And I'm sitting with a bit of a handicap, without being able to walk properly. Somebody has to help me get up. So, then I can walk. I mean, I'm in my bedroom at the moment, but I look a bit like a ladylike. In the evenings, I can't get to the toilet, so I have to be in a napkin. And yet I managed to successfully be appointed as a director with equity. Things that have helped me is really all the things that you've spoken about in terms of stillness, in terms of having something beautiful in front of you, touching, loving yourself, looking at aesthetic things, feeling something nice, eating healthy, treating your body like a temple. And one particular mantra which has really helped me, it's a Hawaiian technique called Ho'oponopono, and it really touches on, you can talk to yourself, you can talk to your body, you can talk to wealth, you can talk to a relationship, you can talk to someone you had a fight with. You can talk to anybody and you can release that negative energy that you're holding in, because all it does is actually just eat you up. And it's as follows, and you can Google it, or I'm sure Colleen can steer you in the right direction towards more practice. But it's really simply these 4 sentences. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you.
I love that one.
And you can talk to yourself, you can talk to your body, you can talk to wealth, you can talk to money, you can talk to your partner, you can talk to your worst enemy if you have one. You can talk to, I talk about my pain. I tell my pain, thank you for my pain. I embrace it positively. And the water thing that you spoke about also, that's a healing thing because there was a study done where people who practiced this mantra drank water, and then there was some others who were the naysayers drank water, and then they put the water under a magnifying glass, and funnily enough, the one was crystallized and looked like snowflakes, and the other one looked like didn't look so pretty. So the healing of the water and also the stillness and the heat that you can bring from your body and hold your face and all the parts that hurt to heal yourself. And what I love about it, sorry to monopolize a few minutes, but what I love about it is that it's instant gratification. So it's not something that you have to wait for and it works. It actually works as soon as you do it.
It does.
So, to just voice my healing and my stress and my coping mechanism that I can, I can do anything I set my mind to after coming out of a coma of 130 days, losing weight of 75 kilos, getting appointed on a board. I am on 2 boards now, even though I can't walk. I think I feel very empowered and very
Thank
confident of anything that I take on. So I just wanted to
Yeah.
share my personal story with the team.
Thank you,
you.
Rashka. I really appreciate that. And just to end off, Colleen, if anyone wants to connect with you, how do they get hold of you? What can you offer to people's companies or individually?
Sure, absolutely. So I do a hodgepodge of things from stress and burnout and overwhelm consulting. I do the workshops where we map the GPS coordinates of the individual as well as the collective stress states of teams and organizations. So anything within that realm that we've spoken about today and beyond that, leadership coaching and training. I work a lot in the sticky spaces where there's grief, where there's conflict, etc., in workplaces. So yes, there's a lot. I'm also a huge fan and facilitator of the Enneagram as a tool to know ourselves and to know ourselves as team. And I find that that in itself is a huge, huge stress reliever because people see each other and they feel seen. And suddenly just the temperature drops in the room to a far more manageable level because people are not fighting invisible defenses and complexities within the human domain, because we know that the human complexity in organizations is the hardest part. So the Enneagram is very, very powerful in terms of that. Yes. And I'm available on Colleen at colleenwilson.co, but I'm sure Google will help you out to find me if you need me on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on my website. Yeah, and I'm happy to engage anytime. But thank you, Cindy. I love talking to you. It's been a long 20+ year relationship with you,
Absolutely.
and it's always a joy. Thank you so
Fantastic.
much.
And thank you to everyone who joined in on the call. We've recorded it. We will be putting it up on YouTube. Thanks for joining us. And Colleen, I really, really appreciate your insights. I hope everyone has a take-home value from today. Thank you so much.